Welcome to the best of Oklahoma gardening. Today we take a look back at the development of the hardy succulent garden. We start at the beginning by evaluating the existing features of the rock garden. Then head to the OSU Landscape Architecture Studio to see the design process. We learn how the students propagate succulents, and then look at the finished installation. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
So if you're looking for an easy, low-maintenance perennial, have two different types of flowers on one plant. Capsaicinoids that gives the pepper its heat. If you've ever visited us here at the Botanic Garden at Oklahoma State University, you probably have seen our rock garden. Well, it's been here for several years and it's come to a point where we want to sort of give it a new life again. So joining me is Professor Cheryl Mihalko, who is one of our landscape architecture professors. Professor Mihalko, so you're going to help us with this project. So tell us a little bit about where do we go? Because I think a lot of homeowners probably have a similar situation.
Yeah, it's always great to think about a new garden, to plan a new garden. It's really exciting. But before we do that, the site of the existing garden can really tell us a lot about how that garden did and potentially how our new garden will do. So I think really looking at the site, we can really see the bones and maybe it'll help us make decisions for the new garden.
So when you talk about the bones of a garden, are we talking about the hardscape, the soil, and hardscape being any structures, rocks, stuff like that?
Right. Those things that usually are hardscape. Sometimes we talk about the bones of the garden in terms of permanent planting.
Okay.
So when we look at this garden, it's not just the actual site where the rock garden was existing. It really is important to take a look at what's surrounding the site and what affects the site. And so we have some really interesting features to consider about how we then bring into the new garden. So the black walnut that covers this garden doesn't interfere with any of the light because we have this beautiful south exposure. That's why the rock garden did so well. But when we look at it, it's of course any shade in Oklahoma is always appreciated, but it's time that it just needs a little work too. So we are bringing in an arborist to take a look at just limbing it up a little, maybe bringing it up so that when you look at the new garden, the leaves aren't in your sight line.
Right.
And then also over time, there's been some, of course, ice storms that have broken some limbs. So we're going to get all that cleaned up.
Okay, so it probably just needs a little bit of maintenance
Just
on
a
it
little work
anyway.
on that.
Yeah. So what's kind of the first step? I mean, it can be intimidating, especially for somebody who is not a professional architect.
Right.
Like, how do I approach this? Do I just start digging and pulling plants or what?
I think it's important to know where you're going. You know, you have to have some idea about it. That'll really help out. So in this case, what we're going to try to do in this garden is going to be to introduce some new cactus and succulent, really cold hardy ones. And this is the perfect site because it's already been a garden that is on a slope, that has not been supplementally watered. So we're looking carefully in this garden to see what we can reuse in terms of plant material.
Okay.
And there are some things.
So your design theme of a hardy succulent garden sort of was inspired by the fact that it was previously a rock garden, right?
Exactly.
So it's not like you're going to change this all of a sudden to an azalea garden that needs really high or low pH or anything like that. You're keeping the intention a little bit similar.
Exactly. We're really just tweaking it.
Okay.
There's been a lot of interest in cold hardy cactus and succulent. I know the ambassadors here have been very interested in it. Of course, our cold winters and just the variety. So we're going to, we are collecting plants now. We're looking at plants as far away as Taos, New Mexico, trying to find native cactus. So we're getting all those ready. But as we look at this garden, some of the things that we can include are the yuccas that are existing. And even in this case, where the yuccas are planted, we're going to go ahead and just leave them there and design around them. There's some other small plant material, like some of the euphorbias. I think we're probably going to dig those up and pot them up until we plant, but everything else will come out. And when we do that, we will probably any stone that's football size or a little bit bigger, we'll go ahead and pick those up and put them off to the side, stockpile them, and then really see what we have under there.
Okay.
When this garden was built, because it was intended as that rock garden, we know we have really good drainage, but we really don't know what's all the way under there. Was there some fabric or some plastic? Is there something that we need to replace?
So this is your opportunity to really dig in, no pun intended, and actually invest or enhance that soil if need be.
Right. And the idea behind a succulent garden, one of the things we know we can do to really help improve its viability is that we'll actually build up. So we do want to dig down, clean it out, see what's there, set those stones aside, and then when we put the plant material back in, we'll be specifically sculpting it in a way that the stones will help support the plant.
Okay. Cheryl, I always kind of think of it as like somebody redoing their living room, right? You're probably not going to go and get a new couch, but you might go get new throw pillows, change the color of the paint, some of that stuff. And so that's sort of like what we're doing here. We're deciding what we're going to keep, and then what we need to change, and then go forward with our plan. Well, Cheryl, I know y'all have a lot of work ahead of you, and we look forward to actually following this through the season. So we'll check back with you soon.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Today we are in the Landscape Architecture Studio in Ag Hall, where all the creativity happens, and joining me is Professor Cheryl Mihalko. Professor, we've talked about the renovation of the rock garden to a hardy succulent garden, but if I looked at that space, I would be lost. So tell us a little bit about the design process and how you get started.
Right. So we did look at the space, and we saw that it had been previously used as a rock garden. So we know it gets a lot of great sunshine. It's on a slope. It gets good drainage. So with climate change, with a lot of new interest in cactus and really cold hardy cactus and succulent, we made a decision to go in with a collection. So we've been working on that. We've done some site demo. And so now it was time to begin to get a plan. So what I did was go out and try to get something as built, just really sketchy, sort of some of the major rocks, some of the existing plant material. There's some wonderful yellow yucca that we'll keep. Other than that, the only real goal that's important is to kind of screen off what really is this nice little Japanese garden. So we'll do some planting to kind of screen that off and really, really work with this area. Okay. So in terms of the plant material, just beginning to think about overall shape, overall masses, the plant material that we'd be working with. Here's kind of a general plant. So the stickiest and prickliest ones, of course, these wonderful cholla and opuntias. Opuntias are the big paddle cactus, and there's a lot of them that are cold hardy. So we'll sort of try those in the center here.
So they're away from the public.
Yeah, right. Not so much on the edge. This area that's up towards the top, we want to put a lot of really nice bright color that'll be eye-catching as you walk up to it. So those will be some of the hesperella, which is the red yucca. Okay. And then there's actually a wonderful little cultivar called stoplight. Okay. That's also a deeper red hesperella. And then mix that in with some of the nymphomia.
Which is the red hot poker
Right,
plant? Okay.
Yeah, and we have some beautiful yellow ones as well as red for this area.
So if you kind of use the color as sort of your...
Yeah, this is kind of what, there's a lot of beautiful pale greens. Here's this kind of reddish color, a bit of yellow up here. And then in this area, we want to get close enough to really see them because a lot of them are quite small. They're more of the barrel mammillaria or the echinoceras, which is very much something like this. They have a beautiful bloom, a bright bloom, but you know, the rest of the year they're just kind of there, not really eye-grabbing. And
so a little closer so you can appreciate the detail of them?
Yeah, and we don't usually mass those. They're harder to find. We don't have as many. We hope that they, you know, expand, but yeah, those will be in there. And then on the edge, again, a little bit of safety, but also lower so that it doesn't block the plant material in the center. Again, this will be really built up because of the importance of drainage. Quite a bit of the sempervirem, which is the hen and chicks.
Okay.
So just sort of basic thinking. And then the next stage is beginning to actually think about specific color, specific layout, what those will be. So this is just a quick one-time generation beyond this plant.
Right. And here it looks like you maybe incorporated some of the texture of the plants.
Right, those are Opuntia pads,
yeah.
and then the rocks are running through. These are the mammarias, and then this beautiful red yucca.
So further help you visualize what it might look like. Okay.
And so in addition to this, we're working on finding plant material, collecting plant material. We have about half of what we need now. It's stored away in the greenhouse. And
how do you, let me interrupt you, how do you figure out how much you might need? So you kind of know your space, right? And then you know the spacing of the plants?
You do, and you know, it's really all over the board. Sometimes it's because of budget. You want it to be really full, really quick, and then you edit out. Of course, with the cactus, it's really great to propagate from them. So you can plant full, and if it gets a little too crowded, you just really go and propagate away from that. So yeah, it's a combination of allowing it to grow some and really just experience. Okay. I've done a lot of this.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
You are a professional.
So in addition to this, installing the garden, over time here, we will have available on the website individual plants. They'll be coded so you could look them up. But we are developing a nice little booklet that tells you the native range. It gives you a picture of the flower and the fruit. So hopefully that'll be really useful to Oklahoma gardeners that really want to try and move in this direction for their garden.
Well, this is going to be a valuable resource, and the fact that we'll have a display garden to kind of accompany that educational material will be fantastic. Thank you for walking us through this process.
You're welcome.
Today we are here with Tanner Kyler, who's a junior in the landscape architecture department. And while he enjoys designing landscapes, he also has a fond passion for succulents and cactus. And you are actually helping with the design on the hardy succulent garden we're establishing. But you're responsible for kind of developing some propagation for all of that, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what we have going on here that you're propagating.
Okay, so here we have some Opuntias. These are native to Oklahoma. And here we have some Cilantro-puntias, which means cylinders of Opuntia.
Good description.
Yeah, good description, yes. And they grow in similar climates, and they prefer arid soils or arid environments, meaning they need really well-draining areas to survive. And they also are quite cold tolerant, up to -20, -30.
Okay, so we're finding them mainly on western Oklahoma side, right?
Yeah, you do find any of these species. Many of them are native to New Mexico and Texas as well.
Okay, all right. So a lot of times we see these and the pads just drop off and propagate. So is it really that simple?
Yeah. I mean, that's how they spread in the wild. If it's not from seeds, they genetically clone themselves by dropping off a pad or an arm into the ground, and it naturally roots.
Okay.
And a whole new plant will form.
So Tanner, where do we get our cuttings in order to propagate?
Well, you can get them from a local nursery that sells cold hardy cacti or cacti that you would like to propagate, or you can get permission from a landowner and go and collect a few of the pads off the plant. This will not harm the plant. It actually can benefit the plant by pruning it back a little bit But do not take the whole plant or the whole stalk from the ground, as this can cause damage to the native species that live there.
Right. It can, if it dies, then
Yes.
there's no more to propagate
Exactly.
from. So, okay, so you've got one from the nursery that we're going to
Yes.
propagate here. Tell me a little about how do we get these off and removed?
All right, so right here along the base right here, we're going to just grab one of the pads and we're going to just break it off just like that. Oops.
Okay.
And then we'll take it and we'll set it down here. But this one here needs to wait 24 to 48 hours to callus over, so it does not get a fungal infection here where it we place in the soil.
Okay, so that moisture kind of makes it susceptible to that fungus.
Yes.
Like potatoes, seed potatoes, you want to kind of let those heal over. So these guys have been sitting for a little while, right?
2 to 3 months actually. You can see the calluses here, and you can see roots actually starting to grow out of these Opuntias.
Okay.
So yes, they're definitely ready to go in the soil.
So when we're potting these up, Tanner, we don't just need regular soil, right? What do we need to use?
We need something that can drain well, because these species are from arid regions where they don't receive a lot of rain, and if they receive too much, they will become susceptible to root rot.
Okay.
And so we want to take a generic potting mix with plenty of perlite, and then we're going to mix that with about 2 parts soil to 1 part sand to make a nice, good draining mix.
Okay, potting soil is what we're talking about,
Yes.
not topsoil, right?
Yes.
So, okay.
And then we're going to lay this out flat here. Evenly. You only need around 1 or 2 inches of soil just to propagate these things, because they're not going to be staying in here very long. And because they're cold hardy, we'll be able to take these and move these out into the soil soon.
Okay.
Outside.
So I noticed you have some rooting hormone. Is that necessary, and where do you put the rooting hormone? On the callus end?
That's a good question. Yeah. With the rooting hormone, it's not 100% necessary, but it does help with preventing fungal infections near the calloused areas and regions of there. And that's where we'll be putting it on. We're going to put it right here where the callus is.
All right.
So we're going to go ahead and open this up. We'll just pour a little bit in here. And we're just going to take those and we're going to give it a nice little dab in here around the base. And this will prevent fungal growth, and it'll help promote root growth.
Okay. And of course, you're wearing gloves, because even though there's not a lot of spines on that, there are some
There's some little, there's
hairs.
microscopic hairs, yes, and they'll get all in your hands, and they're a big mess. So definitely use gloves with rubber on the inside of them.
Okay.
And then we'll just take these, and we're going to kind of bury the calloused portion in the base here, and we're going to push this down and kind of just gently push the soil around like this.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that there's plenty of contact on this pad to promote root growth from the base of it.
Okay. Now, normally I think of pads as being something like what you have over here, where it's on end sticking in the ground.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that form of propagation.
Okay.
But if you lay them on their backs here, they're going to form these, and this one already has started to grow one of its pads here, and it'll form pads in a 360-degree angle around the pad. So it will.
Versus here, you're only getting half of the circle.
So here it will start, and it'll form its own little bushel here, because in nature they just fall off. There's no one there to plant them.
Right,
So they fall off, they land on the ground, and if they root, if they can root, they will.
Okay, and so kind of like the ones that you've got growing here.
Yes.
They almost sort of mimic nature in that they've fallen on the ground. I know you've planted them, propagated them, but they're kind of curling up, and then so will they start growing upright then, or
yes,
the new
actually
growth?
they're already starting to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. These right here have roots already starting to grow, and we'll go ahead and pull one up to kind of show this. And we have roots right here that have started to push out, and once these roots start and the weather's nice outside, you can at any point take them outside. Make sure you have well draining soil where you put them, and they should take right off.
Okay, so is there a best time to plant these, and also when's the best time to propagate these initially?
I find that propagating in the cooler months is better, whenever the plants are done fruiting and they're done flowering, so you're not to hurt the plant. Many of the pads and arms die throughout the winter due to the cold, so it's not going to hurt to take a few of the pads that are most susceptible to the freeze.
Okay.
And you take those around, I normally take them from like October to like December, whenever the weather starts to cool down. And
so after we've taken this cutting, what do we do with it, and how long does it actually take for it to take root?
So it'll vary species to species, but these Opuntias took about 3 to 4 weeks to start promoting roots into the ground, and these have been here for around 2.5 to 3 months, so they've had plenty of time to develop some really good roots.
Okay, so sort of an ideal winter project for gardeners if they wanted to do that. Take those cuttings in late fall.
Yes.
And it's low light in your house, so that's okay.
Yes. They don't mind the low light. Actually, if you put them in direct light along the southern facing window, it might be too much for them if they don't have roots. They could end up drying up and dying.
And then they'll be ready to be rooted and everything to go outside.
Yeah, so I recommend an eastern facing window is the best for propagating cacti.
Okay, is there any concern about our spring rains that we need to be aware of when we're planting them out?
Yes, well, with these species that are native here, there is no issue with them, but if you are trying to plant a drier species that's more native to more arid regions of the American Southwest, you want to make sure that you have really good, well-draining soil, mostly composed of gravels and sands, with very little clay. And this, with the clay, if they were to receive too much rain, they will perish due to root rot.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Tanner, so much for this information, and we look forward to following the project. Today we're back here at our new hardy succulent and cactus garden, and joining me is Professor Cheryl Mihalko, who took this on as a class project last semester. So what do you think? How's the summer treated it?
Well, it was a long, hot summer, but we're really happy with it. We've had really good success. We haven't lost any plants to the heat, and we've had really good growth this summer.
Yeah, so it definitely looks like it's starting to fill in. You can see some of that new growth coming on some of the cactus that are a little bit more of a tender, lighter color green. So that's good report right there. Tell us a little bit about, you kept some of the old plants, right?
We did. We had the opportunity to work in a place that had the right soil, had a lot of these beautiful rocks, and had some of the yuccas. And we left those in mass in the places that they were. And we've even begun to add some other things that are similar in form and texture, the hesperellas here and some additional variegated yuccas. So that's giving the garden a little boost in terms of it looking like it's a little bit established. Of course, it's going to take some years, but we're real happy with it.
Right. And so tell me a little bit, because I think a lot of times people think cactus are so different than a lot of your other landscape plants. But when we're talking about spacing, right? Because I kind of probably think that they grow a little bit slower than some of our perennials, but
some do and some don't. I think the yuccas probably maybe seem a little bit slower, but you can see the new growth on the cactus, and they're really just putting out new pads. They're really, really happy. Our vision is to sort of have it just completely be this wonderland of intermixed cactus. And so when they get a little bit large for their spot, we have the opportunity to propagate by removing pads.
Okay, so just like any other plant, kind of space them based off of the requirement for that plant and give it some time, right?
Absolutely.
So you thinking again about 3 years, that would be the time?
I think so. I think so. We have to just, with our Oklahoma weather, we have to just see how it goes. But I think we're in good shape with the selection of material that we got, and also the way we've placed the stones. So when it gets really cold, we should have plant material that survives into zone 4. But the way the stones are placed will give it that little extra heat in the winter.
Okay, all right. So we've got plenty of hardy material, but we've also, because we know we get those crazy Oklahoma winters sometimes. So a little extra protection there. And I think that creates that little microclimate, right? That sometimes we neglect and we need to take advantage of more.
Well, in Oklahoma, we have to do everything we can. So the other thing is that we know we've got a great soil, one that's really mixed in a real granular form, so the water is going to drain right through. So whereas we're always appreciating rain in Oklahoma, this of course is a plant collection that doesn't need a lot of water, so hopefully when it rains it goes right through, and it being in the sunny spot we should be fine.
Right, south facing on a slope also helps with that as well. So I know your class has been involved in some identification projects as well for these plants. Tell us a little bit about that mapping.
So this semester, the studio design class has come out already, and we identified each plant in its location. So they are currently developing an as-built plan, and that should be ready by the end of the semester. So we'll post that where everyone can see not just the name of the plant, but where it is actually located in the garden.
Okay, excellent. Well, that'll be nice for visitors also that are here, and just for all of us to learn a little bit more about maybe some plants that we tend to not always give its full glory. So thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank
Cheryl.
you.
There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead. Join us next week on the Best of Oklahoma Gardening as we brighten up your winter day as we highlight some colorful summer flowers.
Tell us a little bit about what your semester is like.
So this
Wait, let me re-ask that question.
However, like all gardens and even some home designs, occasionally I don't even like what I'm saying.
To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticulture Society, the Tulsa Garden Club, and the Tulsa Garden Center.